thought we would start things off by sharing one issue that we're having ourselves in our office, with schools contacting us. Now, obviously, you can imagine we get lots of different questions and requests from schools wanting to know how they can recycle, how can we do this, how can we do that, how they can implement different aspects of the EcoSchools program. But one of the most tricky ones that we've come up with, that has come into the office, is we have a lot of schools asking us how can they recycle more. And obviously, this depends on which local authority they're in. It depends on whether they're a rural school, an urban school. It's not a simple, straightforward question. So I thought I would take one of the examples and put it to you as how can we work together to support schools to get around this. So the example is that we have a lot of schools asking us how can we recycle more things, more volume of things. And the one that comes up most often is glass and tin foil in particular. And this, from what I can gather, I'm not an expert on waste legislation, I'll throw my hands up, but from what I can gather is that it is the problem is a cross between the fact that some schools' waste is collected in a residential stream and some schools' waste is collected in a commercial stream, and it depends on which authority and where they are. Some small schools in the Highlands, for example, are collected along with the houses next door to them, so they can recycle the same things the houses can, whereas some schools are, like in Glasgow or in more built-up areas, are maybe collected on a business stream of waste so they can recycle more things or different things. So there's no one way of doing it. It's rather confusing. That's what's rather confusing for schools. But we had someone speak to us about the fact that they couldn't recycle glass and they couldn't recycle tin foil in the school, and the pupils in particular were getting a bit frustrated because they were trying to recycle as much of their waste as they can, take as much out of landfill, reduce the amount of waste that they were sending to landfill. But there were these two things they knew were recyclable because they could do it at home, couldn't do it at school. So a member of staff was taking them home with them to recycle them. Now obviously there's issues with waste transfer notes. It's a technicality, I know, but you're not allowed to do that, right? You can't take waste from school, it's not yours. You can take your own packed lunch waste home with you, because that's yours. But you can't go and take a bag of tin foil or a bag of glass recycling home with you without a waste transfer note. And I don't think any teacher is going to start getting into registering to be a transporter of waste and submitting waste transfer notes for every bag. So that's not the solution. You're not supposed to put waste from school in a household waste depot. You're not supposed to bring it home with you. If you can't recycle it at school, it has to go to landfill. That's not really satisfying. It doesn't really teach pupils what we want them to. It doesn't really empower them. It doesn't really help them, teach them about recycling and say these things, you can recycle at home, but you can't recycle them at school. Why? Well, big, long technical answer is not satisfying for pupils, and it's not really, because of legislation, there's not a reason why we should be saying to pupils, this is a limit on the things that you can do to improve your school environment. So, if there's a strong desire from both pupils and staff to keep recyclable waste out of landfill, right? But there's issues on the local authority side with infrastructure, with where can we recycle it? How can we pick up this waste? What is the best solution? The only one that I've managed to dig up is that in some schools, and again these are the smaller rural schools, a lot of them in the Highlands, host recycling banks on their own school property. The recycling bank is for their village. It's not just, that's not their bin for the school. That's a recycling point, if you like, for the whole village. But that's not ideal either, because there's the cost of collecting that, which the local authority may not want to incur. There may be other better placed recycling points elsewhere. Like, I'm thinking of my daughter's school in Stirling. You wouldn't want to drive a recycling lorry up that road. And then there's health and safety concerns, especially with glass, because you don't want a big box of broken glass right next to the playground. So, I'm throwing myself on your mercy, and I'm saying, can you think of any other way, or in your local authority, is there any other solution to this problem? Because you'd be surprised how often this comes up, at least once a week. Yes?
Well, obviously, with the introduction of waste bottle regulations 13 months ago, it's more now that all organisations and businesses recycle their glass, pick up plastic, cardboard,
Sure.
tins, etc.
Yeah.
So, as far as I'm concerned, the buck stops with the Education Department, who supplies the commercial waste contracts. If the schools need to be recycling their glass by law, so they should really be going back to the Education Department and say, you have to provide us with a commercial waste collection service for glass, unless you can provide us with a recycling point which we can access.
I knew you'd come through. Thank you.
It's also suitable containers. One of the issues you've raised is broken glass.
Yes.
You can have any size of bin walkable, the flat lid, so that it's a sealed container. So even if that bin falls over, glass is not going to spread anywhere.
Okay.
So it's a case of purchasing the right type of bin to suit your needs as well.
Yeah.
So some local authorities will lease bins, so Fife Council lease bins, and they can have fully lockable ones. Perth and Kinross Council, the customer purchases the bins. So
Okay.
it comes back to what's the most suitable container to recycle.
Right, okay.
Do you know what I need to think through as well about is what they're using, how they're bringing glass out of school?
Well,
Because surely purchasing we don't recycle glass in schools.
I have had that conversation with a few teachers and head teachers that have called, what is the glass? You know, what's coming to the school in glass? I mean, you know, if there's milk, it's not coming in glass, it's plastic. Who's bringing the glass in?
Much glass in school at all.
Yeah, when you think,
glass is maybe the staff, if there'll be coffee cups or something,
yeah,
but
maybe.
Shouldn't really have any glass in the school.
See, I wouldn't have thought so, but, you know.
I don't have any problems like that because, you know, the old rural school that will get dealt with
Yeah.
early domestic whereas the rest don't.
Because that just makes sense, you wouldn't, you know,
But they
a
do
big
have
part
a
of school.
responsibility because you need to get rid of your glass, so
Yeah.
it does come to the waste.
So there's maybe keeping glass
Yeah.
out of school
If
in
it
the
was
first
coffee
place.
jars coming into school, then that's going to be teachers who's taking that in, so that's not down to the same basis of how much if they take it in, they've got to take it back.
Possibly.
Glass should not be getting out of the school at all.
Yeah, sure, sure.
There's so many things you can do. You can
Art
build
projects.
walls, yes, you can build little specialists, you can build walls and yes, you can build
Well,
greenhouses.
plastic bottles, yeah, but I think, again, having pupils using glass would be a bit of a health and safety
Yeah,
problem.
in
Issue.
the health
Midlothian,
and safety concern.
Oh,
yeah.
our commercial trade collection
Yeah.
that is offered is exactly the same. They take the same materials as our residential.
Okay,
So for schools, you know, we would offer the same
okay.
materials to be uplifted, so we wouldn't have that issue that, you know, they couldn't recycle everything that's offered.
Okay.
Yes, so that kind of overlaps and solves the problem in a way.
Now this one, I won't name which authority this came from. This came from, we've had a couple of different people mention this exact problem, especially waste transfer, which, you know, there's no
Well,
solution,
again, I
but,
would be
you know,
saying
that
very
specific
little
came out of a
glass is in
specific,
schools, you
Yes,
know, and
yeah.
that's the other.
yeah, I mean, without knowing where the glass is coming from, you're right,
Yeah.
that's, so.
Surely tinfoil will be in cans and plastics.
Not necessarily, not all. The saying now is I think what to accept aluminium foil and everything else, we don't accept it without dry mix recycling because it's a lower grade and it's not accepted by a contractor.
Yeah.
It depends on the procurement contract and what they want to do.
It's also not very heavy, and my understanding is that in a lot of places it's not collected because the space it takes to collect enough of it to bother.
It's also
Selling
a
it by weight.
contamination issue, it's often usually
Yeah.
contaminated and they only use foil, which is actually quite a rare thing to actually.
Well, tinfoil is one of the only things that we can't recycle in our own offices, and we're trying to work with outside caterers to not use it, because you're right, it's a food contamination issue. We can't take it home with us, it's not allowed, we don't want to be seen to be doing anything that is, we wouldn't recommend to any school doing, and it's not recyclable, so, you know, we're trying to do what, who was it suggested, just keeping the glass out of the school in the first place, just keeping the tinfoil out of the office in the first place, so. Right, well, hey, we've solved one problem already, job done. Yep.